Hey, Fatty, I have a few important questions for you. First, do you gravel?
Howdy coming up with new verbs. I do not gravel, at least not in the traditional sense. I've done gravel races like Crusher and the Tusher, but always on a mountain bike.
Okay, next question. Do you DI2?
Is it going to be all new verbs today?
It is.
All right. So the answer to that one is a definite yes. My road bike setup is Ultegra Di2, and I have raced Leadville on an 11-speed 2x Di2 setup.
Awesome. Well, good news is now you can combine these two, plus add 12-speed, and get a new thing from Shimano, and that is GRX 12-speed Di2. Shimano has had Di2 gravel already, but now it has moved to 12-speed. For the new GRX Di2, it is 2x only, but Shimano says it's got a 1x version in the works. Be patient. One of the great features with the new GRX Di2 is that the shifters are wireless, making bikes build much easier.
Yeah, we love that our listeners love mountain bikes, but we also know many of you do gravel and you do Di2. And for you, may we suggest the new 12-speed group set from Shimano, the GRX 12-speed with Di2. Check out the specs and bling at bike.shimano.com.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. It is Season 7, Episode 16 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, high to the most.
And I'm Eldon Nelson. Fatty, on this show, we are circling around a topic covered earlier in this season, and that is the question of weight. We have some more insights on personal weight, and we have some ideas on how to cut weight from your bike.
Yeah, we didn't want to leave that topic just hanging there without some other perspectives. We have 5 interviews to help us dive a little deeper on the topics of personal weight and bike weight.
And here comes Eldon Nelson with 14 minutes to spare on that clock. The bragging rights and the heavy hardware. That's all you. Welcome back to your Leadville family and your finish line.
It's Fatty's Finishing Tips, advice that's going to seem really obvious to you after you heat it in a couple of very short months.
Yeah, that's right. After a couple of very short months, and very short is what we're emphasizing here. Last episode, I talked about a dress rehearsal plan for your day before and day of nutrition. This episode, I have another important part of your race setup that you need to start thinking about right now, and that is your shoes and your cleats. By June, which is what we are in now, you should have your shoe choice for the race dialed. If you are like me, you will be wearing the same shoes you've worn for a couple of years, because older shoes are comfortable shoes. But here's the tip. If the shoes you're wearing for Leadville 100 are worn and comfortable, go grab them right now and turn them over. If the cleats are not brand new, order a new pair of cleats and have them on standby to put on your shoes about 1 month before race day, say the 4th of July weekend. And while you are looking at the bottom of your shoes, take a good hard look at the soles. Mountain bike shoes are often very stiff-soled, and stiff stuff cracks. Take a hard look at the insoles of the shoes as well. Inspect the BOA dials or Velcro or lace closures and make sure that they are all good shape.
Oh, yeah, boas. Don't let a boa fail on you on race day. Man, that can be a deal breaker. I'm a fan of broken-in shoes. Not broken shoes, but broken-in shoes on race day as well. In part because, biking in new shoes is biking in any shoe, right? That's brand new just sucks. And bike shoes in particular because they're so stiff. But make sure now, while there's still time, to wear in new shoes and new cleats, that everything close to your feet is in good shape. Having to do this with brand new shoes or cleats is a real painful proposition.
If you plan on going custom with your kit, we hope your design is in the pipeline, that it's already done, that it is in with DNA, and you're just waiting for it to come back to you from Italy. They're made in Italy, so there is lead time involved. Check with DNA to see if they can still get it done in time for Leadville.
Beyond your kit, there are some other items, you want to have before your race day on Leadville, at Leadville. DNA's accessory page is filled with loads of stuff, great stuff. Now, we're going to point you, though, to two things you might overlook. Here's mine, and I didn't know they had it until the other day when I had a look, and that is a cycling head buff. And while DNA calls it a head buff, it can really be used for all sorts of stuff. You can wear it around your neck for the cold morning out of town. You can cover your mouth and nose should you run into some dust, like on the Powerline descent. It can go over your head like a skull cap. It can even be made into a headband. And finally, it can be made to tie a ponytail. And get this, Fatty, this versatile piece from DNA is just $10. I'll take two, please.
Yeah, you could wear one for your ponytail, hottie. You could, or for the beard that I've been growing. Absolutely. I love it. It's a great deal. The other item, and this one is a little more obvious, gloves. Not the regular long finger gloves, but DNA winter gloves. At Leadville, winter can come calling anytime it wants, and that includes the second Saturday in August. The winter gloves are wind and water resistant, and that is good down to just about freezing.
Right. So while the custom kit window is just about closing the door, to accessories remain wide open. Check out all the cycling apparel extras at dnacycling.com.
In general, this show is about collaboration. The show topics are agreed upon through conversation. But one in particular this season was, frankly, all me. I told Hottie, I've got this nickname, Fatty. So we've got to talk about weight as it pertains to Leadville.
And we have, in episode 12, we had Dr. Kyle Pfaffenbach on to talk about the right way to lose weight. But we felt some further investigation was in order, both in the area of body weight and bike weight. Let's start where we left off, and that's with your weight, personal weight. First, we have a lifetime Grand Prix athlete and coach, Kristen Ligon. She won last year's Unbound XL. She has a top 10 at Leadville, and she runs a coaching business that helps athletes get ready for big events, including how they should approach the question of weight. Okay, we're here with Kristen Ligon, lifetime Grand Prix again. This is your second time. Welcome back to the Grand Prix, right? Yeah, you won the 350 XL in your off year. That's a hell of an off year.
Right. Yeah.
And then now you're back to the Grand Prix. Why'd you decide to go back to the Grand Prix?
Yeah, it was such a good experience in 2022. And it was nice to take a year off, focus on something a little bit different. And then, it's just the great competition. It just keeps getting better on the women's side. And honestly, one of the biggest things that brought me back was that they announced there's going to be a women's only start at Leadville this year. And so that was something that I just really wanted to take part in and see how that changes up the race. So that was a big one.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to hear. Yeah, because certainly Lifetime was conscious about, making the women's competition its own thing and really purifying or making it a more pure event for the women.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see how it changes the dynamics of the day.
So we're here with Kristen Ligon because you are both an athlete and a coach. You have a coaching business in addition to everything else you do surrounding media. And we're going to talk to Kristen about a couple of things. First of all, we're going to talk about weight, and we're talking about personal weight, how much the racer weighs. We know from our surveys, Kristen, that this has become a large issue for our listeners. They're very concerned about their weight. So at the risk of offending a woman, I'm going to ask you questions about weight.
No problem.
I'm going to start with probably the most offensive one. Do you weigh yourself?
That's a really personal question, I think, because it's such a, everybody has a different relationship with their own weight. I personally do, just because I'm interested and curious to kind of see what my training is doing, what I'm seeing on the weight side of things. But it's not, I feel like I have a good relationship with that it's not going to spiral into any kind of problems down the road. And so I think that's something that each athlete has to kind of identify. Is this going to, take over and cause something, not great in terms of eating and that kind of stuff? So for me, yes, I do, because it's interesting.
Yeah. And when you do weigh yourself, what kind of fluctuations are you looking for? And what are some of the caveats you will impose on yourself as far as what that number might tell you, like water weight and so forth?
Yeah, I try and do it pretty scientifically in terms of like the same time and I don't weigh myself every day at all, but when I do, it's trying to do it, first thing in the morning, something like that, where you're going to get repeatable-ish results so that it is, apples to apples versus, after you've just, gotten off the bike and sweated a whole bunch. So yeah, just looking at that, and a lot of it is that seeing the differences as you are training harder and seeing how your body's absorbing more water, holding more water versus other things. So yeah, just trying to keep it as scientific as possible there.
Yeah. Are there any trends you notice, for instance, as you're getting ready for a hard season like the Grand Prix or getting ready for a big event and you're training hard? What kind of trends are you looking for?
Yeah, I think, not getting too caught up in it early in the season, I think is a big one. So like just relaxing about it. You are where you are in the off season and letting that, naturally have a little bit more weight on through the winter season. And then as the volume kicks up or the intensity starts to kick up in the season, you start seeing that weight coming down gradually. But I think the biggest thing is not seeing big swings. I think that's where we can get into trouble when we just go too far overboard and start seeing all the, bad ramifications from that.
And for a specific event like Leadville, which we'd all love to carry less of weight around, especially when we're going up Columbine.
Right.
Will you intentionally try to shave a little bit going into an event like that?
Yes and no. Like, yes, of course, being a little bit lighter is going to make you faster, but it's always at the, making sure that I'm feeling strong and I'm fueling well just on and off the bike regularly. It's actually more of a unconscious thing that's happening, as your training's getting bigger, as it's getting more intense, it just kind of naturally starts to shed off. At least for me, it does. I know everybody, has a different experience with that, but yeah, it's mostly just coming from the training itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you would like to, or when you do try and cut a few pounds, what's your approach? How do you do it?
Yeah, I just really gradually, again, just trying not to I don't cut big things out of the diet. For me, honestly, it's drinking fewer beers throughout the week, and or just trying to really just be conscious of when, making sure before and after I'm riding, keeping that, fueling well during that so that you're not coming off of the bike just starving. And that's where I think a lot of times I get into trouble is I don't eat enough during a hard training ride, so I come home and that. All the bad snacks, quote unquote bad snacks, are looking really good. So
right, because that's when it can backfire on you. Say you are trying to maintain weight or cut weight, and on the bike you fail to eat enough.
Right.
That's going to backfire. That's going to slingshot on you.
Totally, exactly. It's one of those things where you spend all day thinking about it and you're really, trying to be really precise with everything throughout the day. And then you get to 7, 8 o'clock at night and you're like, I'm starving. And then that's where you go for the stuff that maybe isn't the best option for you.
Yeah. And when you do get really hungry, what do you like? How do you cure that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's really important to listen to your cravings, though, too, because I think our bodies are really smart and they are telling us, if you're craving sweets, maybe you need something that's in that kind of sweeter thing, or salts, obviously, if that's what you're craving a lot of times, then that's what you need. So I think it's good to just kind of day by day listen to what's going on with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could you put athlete weight into context for us as far as total preparation is concerned? Where does it lie with everything else that's going on?
Yeah, I just really think it's part of the process, or it's the result of the training. That's really where it is. It's not a key thing that we're focused on in terms of what you're trying to do on the bike. It's more of just what happens when you are out there training hard, you're being focused, and you're just staying into the training. That's where you see that result happening without even trying.
Yeah. The watts per kilogram number is an interesting one. It seems to inform, but it also can send us down
totally
the wrong or even dangerous path. And we're talking about the kilogram half of that, right?
Right. Yeah, I think, you definitely have to pay attention to that, because you do start to, as you get lighter, you do start to lose some of that that strength and that durability. And I think that's where, it doesn't matter how light you are. If you can't, if you're sick all the time and you can't train, or you're injured because your body's not getting the nutrients and the support it needs, then you're not going to be very fast. So it's definitely weight's great. It's something that we can control, but it's really the other things that are less controllable, or less, easy to measure, that are way more important in my opinion.
Yeah. I went into the Leadville Trail 100 my first year, in fact, and I weighed right around 150. For a guy at 6'1", that is very, very low.
Right.
In the end, it was too low. I didn't weigh enough. I was weak. But I didn't recognize it at the time.
Right.
All I knew is I could climb really good.
Yep.
So how can people recognize maybe when they're not fueling enough, they're not giving their body the nutrients it needs, and maybe they're losing too much, and maybe too much too fast?
Yeah, I think I see it a lot with getting sick. I think that's the easiest one. If you just start, getting colds here and there, or, you just can't recover from those colds, that's a great indicator that, maybe my body's not getting what it needs. Also the recovery from the training. So I think, we have to be fueling really strategically for these hard workouts, these big rides that we're doing. And so if you're starting to see yourself, not have that same recovery that you did when you were a little bit, had a few more pounds on you, that's another sign. Because again, it comes down to, if we can't train, if we can't keep the consistency going in our training, then it doesn't matter how light you are.
And are you a believer that the training will take care of the weight? If you're training hard, don't worry, you're going to lose.
I think in general, everybody's different, and we see, with athletes that I work with, I see different people dealing with it differently. So in most cases, I think if you're sticking to your training, but it really does come to good habits off the bike as well. So again, kind of what we talked about, making sure you're fueled for your rides so you're not making bad decisions later, and just keeping, again, good habits. So good foods that you're eating on a normal basis. We can't be out eating, crappy food all the time and just train it away.
Yeah.
But also that's going to affect your training, because if you're not eating good, whole foods, then you're probably not going to be training very well.
Mm-hmm. So give us a final note on this. What's your final advice? As people think about how much they weigh, they're getting ready for a climbing event, Leadville Trail 100, give us some overall perspective on how you'd like to see them approach this topic.
I think just think of it as functional, functional strength, functional weight. So it's fine to focus on how to drop a little bit here and there, but just really focus on how are you feeling on and off the bike? And if you can stay strong, if you can stay, keep your recovery going, that's where you're going to see the biggest benefits. And so I'd say try and relax on the weight side of things and just let the training do its work.
Mm-hmm. Kristen Legan has a coaching business. That coaching business is?
Rambler Coaching, Rambleur. And you can check me out there and send notes and questions that way.
I like Kristen's approach. She knows weight is a metric worth paying attention to, but she doesn't let it dominate her or her clients' thinking. We'll have more from Kristen a little later in the show, but first we're going to turn to someone we had on the show last season to talk nutrition and who knows plenty about performance and body makeup, Dr. Alan Lim. Hadi caught up with Alan at Sea Otter to get his thoughts on the scale and the Leadville racer.
A lot of our athletes, especially the Leadville athlete, especially the person who may be newer to sport, gets very concerned about how much weight they're going to have to pull around, especially at Leadville where there's so much climbing. First of all, just give us your overview on athlete and their proper weight and how they should look at weight loss.
Everybody, you all just need to freaking relax, right? Trust yourself, trust your intuition. There is no appropriate or inappropriate weight. I think we're way, way past that. What is appropriate or inappropriate is whether or not your energy intake matches your energy demand. And that's all important. There's a real serious issue in athletics, especially in endurance sports. It's something called REDS, or Relative Energy Deficit Syndrome. And what occurs is that when we don't get enough energy in to meet the demands of our activities, and we're in an energy deficit, yes, we can begin to lose weight, but we also stress out the body, and we can get these hormonal changes, and these changes within an axis called the hypopituitary gonadal axis that can make us really, really dysfunctional. In women, this often presents as a loss of menstrual cycle. In men, this often presents as a drop in testosterone. The net of it is that when we're energy deprived for too long, especially in a situation where we're trying to make weight, we harm our bodies more than we help our bodies. We lose bone density, we lose muscle mass, we become tired, our hormonal systems become dysregulated. All of a sudden, simple tasks become extraordinarily difficult and we can become really, really ill. So let your weight loss settle in as a natural outcome of your intuition about what you need to eat and your physical activity. Meaning, if you're hungry, eat, satiate yourself. Satiate yourself in a way that is sustainable for the long term, not just for the season, not just for the next week as you're entering a race, but for the rest of your life. Enjoy food, have a great relationship with it, and share it with others. Cook your own food in your own kitchen. If you're not hungry, don't stress out about it either, right? I do think that the brain is built for survival. Part of that survival mechanism is our hedonistic drive for food and drink. And if we respect and listen to that, the human animal wants to survive. Once we start to use maybe kind of our higher level intellect too much, we can get into trouble, right? And so we inform ourselves both based on intuition, maybe a longer term strategic plan, right? But also culture, right? And also the joy that comes with eating. Yeah. So yeah, obviously power to weight matters. Obviously at the razor's edge of performance, this can change how we perform. But I think that you got to consider that it's not just about performance, it's also about your health and well-being. The two are always in tension. Everyone has to figure out how to balance those two things. I do think that the body will figure it out. Right?
Obviously, a lot of us will have scales around, and we need to use those at times for hydration, as you just mentioned. What would you advise about using a scale? Should people monitor their weight, I guess is what I'm asking.
If you're interested, periodically, but not every day, right? I don't think that, I don't know, like we all look in the mirror, we're all self-critical, we can all feel when we get a little heavier, we can maybe even see it in our face or in our belly, so relax, right?
All right.
And remember that the scale is also a reflection of so many different processes that are happening, whether it's water weight, whether it's, whether or not you've even taken a dump that day, right? We had this funny thing at the 2006 Tour de France where we had this poop weight competition. So we stopped using the scale to get all neurotic about like body weight. We just started using it to see who could lay the biggest turd on the team bus, right? And we had to all post it up on the inside of the board. That was a lot of fun. So, the scale doesn't have to be something that is shameful. It could also be something that you weigh your literal poop size with.
Okay.
Everybody weigh your poops. That's all I got to say.
I like that. Okay, we'll be careful then about the weight discussion and the weight obsession, I think, is kind of your message
Relax,
here.
everyone.
Yeah.
Freaking relax. You're just fine. We love you. I love you. You're loved. You're not alone. It's all good. You don't have to be who you aren't. Feel comfortable in your own skin.
And you can
Remember-
still perform by just letting nature take its course.
That's the whole point of it, is perform because you let nature take its own course, because you're in tune with who you are and what you want to be, and because you consistently behave in a way that is congruent with your values, not some exterior expectation. Yes, goals are important, but you have to have joy in the daily process in order to meet those goals. And metrically, while it's a way to hold us accountable and to measure things, there is a bigger picture out here, right? And I think the very nature of it is this idea that, you got to find a way to have joy in your daily process, and everything else takes care of itself. And while that might sound maybe too soft for the athlete mindset, the athlete mindset is about balance, and it's about holding, maybe two opposing beliefs at the same time and figuring a way to still function.
Dr. Lim, always a pleasure. Thanks again for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We love Dr. Alan Lim. He really brings what can be a mental impediment to good preparation back home. And I think we heard this from all of our guests who spoke about body weight. As you train, your body will respond the way it needs to. You can do some intentional things to cut a little extra weight, but avoid those extremes.
Yep, I am learning that, have learned that. You got to put your weight into context with the rest of your fitness and your preparation, even if your nickname does happen to be fatty.
All right, our sponsors join in celebrating your Leadville 100 and mountain biking in general, but once in a while, we like to send the love back their way, especially when they've had a huge victory.
Yeah, such is the case with Envy, Tadej Pogacar, and the Giro d'Italia. Tadej dominated the Giro, winning 6 stages and the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, and he did so with Envy wheels and an Envy cockpit.
And Envy got into the pink party with pink Envy decals on Tadej's deep carbon wheels and pink bar tape on his Envy carbon cockpit. Pink may have been the Barbie color last summer, but it belongs to Tadej and Envy this spring.
Okay, so Hadi, are we going to tie all this road, Giro, Tadej, pink love into something the Leadville racer can use? Yeah, sort of. Oh, I checked the website. There are no pink decals for the M Series mountain bike components, but Envy does have some pink socks.
Okay, while we're putting in a request for more pink decals, just do us a favor. Give Envy a like or a congrats on its socials. They do work hard to put the best under the best, whether that be wheels and bars for the Giro winner or carbon components for the 12-hour Leadville racer. Congrats, Envy, or as they say in Italian, bravo, Envy.
Speaking of Envy and carbon and light, let's turn our weight focus away from the rider and toward the ride, your bike, in other words. While it's cheaper to cut body weight, cutting bike weight comes with fewer performance consequences.
At Sea Otter, we went on a quick shopping trip looking for ways to shave some grams. We start with our most expensive item, and someone we spoke with last year, Sean Estes with Fox Factory Racing, was a great interview on suspension setup. This year at Sea Otter, he was showing off a new cross-country fork from Fox that shaves weight and smooths out the bumps. We're here at Sea Otter, Sean, looking to save weight, and I think Fox, again, has found a way to cut a few grams. Before it was step cast, that was a big weight savings for folks on Fox product, and now you folks have an entire new damper system.
Taking it to the next level, yeah.
Tell us what you have on the XC side of things as far as a fork setup.
Totally. So yeah, it's a great and exciting year, I think, for endurance racing, not just for Fox, but for kind of the industry, right? Like I think we're seeing a nice resurgence in, the broader umbrella of endurance style racing, whether it's, like here, Fuego XL, or whether it's Leadville or Schwalm. Like there's just so many of these great events that are catching on that are like, not just your hour and a half to 2 hour endurance, but your 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 hour endurance, right? Like it's very popular again, which is exciting. And we've got some really cool new products aimed at that type of a rider this year. Like you mentioned, the damper, which is kind of like the basis of it. We actually have all new dampers across the board this year, not just endurance. But I think for this audience, like we'll focus on the endurance stuff because that kind of makes the most sense. So the kind of big story, in a nutshell, is that all of our new dampers are now using our grip spring-backed IFP self-healing architecture as like the foundation, which is exciting, particularly as it relates to the endurance side, because our Fit 4 damper that's now been replaced with this new Grip SL damper, that Fit 4 damper used a bladder. It was a different style architecture, and it was a great damper, particularly for endurance racing and riding, right? I'd say more the gravity-oriented crowd wanted a little more suppleness and kind of like feel out of it. But for the endurance rider, it was probably like typically more than sufficient. However, with Grip SL, the task we put in front of our engineering team was like, the classic make it feel better and make it lighter, which is like, usually they're like, pick one. It's like, no, we're like, give us both. We really need both here. So, they nailed it. Brian Lampman was the engineer specifically who designed the Grip SL damper, and he's been doing suspension, in bicycles since the 90s. He worked with riders like Nico Vulio and people like that way back in the day. But prior to that, he worked in race car stuff with like IMSA, with Porsche and things like this. So he's been doing it for a long time. Very, very talented engineer. In fact, he's our engineering manager at our Scotts Valley location. Great guy. He knocked it out of the park with Grip SL. So On the compression side, we've got like I said, not only is it the spring-backed IFP style, and when I say self-healing, what I mean is it's a recirculating damper. So, and I talked about the bladder earlier, like the advantage of the self-healing IFP, the spring-back IFP design, is that the damper is designed to be able to ingest bath oil and then purge it back out into bath oil. So the damper oil and the bath oil is the same, and that prevents the damper from ever like pumping up or getting firmer, or ultimately hydrolocking, creating all kinds of problems. So we call it self-healing or recirculating, meaning that it's a very durable damper that's going to give you long-lasting, very high-end performance. We went to a 24 millimeter diameter on the IFP, which is really like quite a bit larger than anything we've done in the past. Like even our gravity damper last year used a 20 millimeter IFP. So it's a very large, robust architecture that allows us to package everything a little shorter vertically, because the IFP has to move farther up and down because the volume is larger diameter wise. So kind of a cool little advancement there. But the main thing is, by going from the bladder to this spring-backed IFP design, the ride quality, just like I said, like I don't think endurance racers were riding around going, oh, Fit 4 dampers don't feel great. They felt really good for that application. But when you jump to a Grip SL, you realize kind of what you were missing. So with as many sort of individual valves as you've got on the compression, and with this pressure balanced sort of tuning philosophy that we have, what you end up with is a damper that's very supportive. So it rides high in the travel, but it's also not harsh. It's very supple. In the past, with any other damper, if you wanted your fork to stay high in the travel, you just needed to like either add a bunch of volume spacers or add a bunch of air pressure or add a bunch of compression, and all of which kind of made it harsher and less sensitive. And to your point earlier about using our bodies as suspension, by the end of a 60 or 80 or 100 mile endurance race, you're tired. So we really wanted this damper to allow riders to be fresher and let the damper do the work without having it be like taking away any efficiency, from in terms of pedaling, power transfer.
Yeah, that's all well and good. We love the technology, but Sean, you got to save me some weight. I'm dragging this bike around for 105 miles for 10, 12 hours.
Yep.
What's it going to cost me? What's the weight penalty here?
Oh, I'm a weight weenie too. So yeah, we were able to save. So every Grip SL damper is optimized for the chassis that it's going into, which is another way. So there's basically like 3 or 4 different versions of this damper that are each optimized, travel optimized. So like in our gravel fork, the taper cast that only has 40 or 50 mils of travel, we designed the damper around 50 mils. So the oil volumes and all of the shaft lengths and all that stuff is optimized, which lets us pull out even more weight. But on average, depending whether you're talking, this damper is available in our 32 taper cast, our 32 step cast, which I'll talk about in a minute because it's brand new, a new version, and then our 34 step cast, which is a existing chassis that gets updated with the new damper. You're saving an average of 50 grams over the Fit 4, which is, for weight weenies, that's tremendous. To put it in perspective, on our gravel fork, we're down to sub 1200 now, which is pretty impressive, especially considering that the ride quality's gone up. And we maintained, just a little footnote, we maintained the 3 positions that we talked about last year, with like open being your most sensitive, closed being like essentially a lockout, a very firm mode. We don't really call it a lockout because it has a blow off, because, old school lockouts that would just hydraulically lock the fork, right? You crash into something, you could blow up the damper. It's not like that. So we just call it a firm mode, but make no mistake, it's essentially locked out. It's very, very firm. But I mentioned it last year, that middle mode is my kind of set it and forget it mode for endurance. So for like these races where I don't want to be thinking about like actuating a lockout lever all the time, just set it in the middle and ride it. It's going to feel great. So we maintained all that functionality while still saving 50 grams and increasing performance pretty dramatically. And then another sort of note on that is on the new 32 SC and the 34 SC, we also came out with a Cobalt SL through axle that's internally butted and drops another 12 grams over the regular Cobalt axle. So on the 34 SC, from last year's model to this year's model, we're down about 65 grams total. And now we're at like low 1400s for a 120 endurance fork. And then that kind of segues into this all new 32 step cast that you folks listening can't see, but we're looking at all new chassis. Yeah, you mentioned a bit ago how we developed the step cast technology, back, I think it was 16 or something when we first came out with the 32 step cast. And it's kind of a cool story, but like when we first designed that 100 mil 32 step cast back then, it was for XCO. It's what everyone was running, 100 mil forks. It was available in 27.5, 29, both. A lot of people were running 27.5 front and rear back then for XCO. Courses weren't that technical. Since then, we developed the 34 step cast at 110 and 120 travel and 100 for people wanting something a little more for like the modern XCO style of riding with like tougher courses and more technical features. So this new 32 step cast, while it is a new 32 step cast and does kind of directly replace the old 32 step cast that we still offer, I really look at this. This is a modern kind of marathon fork. This is like short track and marathon optimized kind of fork, right? Like there's plenty of riders who are going to want to use this for XCO, but with the way the market is, like when we were designing this, the goal and like the design brief was based around modern endurance racing. So we were thinking of like, European style marathon in addition to kind of like this very popular American style of like the races I mentioned earlier, like where we are here at Seattle Fuego XL.
Or a Leadville Trail 100.
Perfect for Leadville.
Okay.
So that being said, it's 100 mils only. There's no shorter or longer options. It's optimized around 100. It's 29 only. It's just your total modern long form XC. I even jokingly call it a long travel gravel fork,
Sure.
like the new category of long travel gravel, if you will.
Now, you've put the bridge too behind the stanchions now, right?
Right.
Why? What does that do?
Couple different reasons. So the reverse arch allows us to use less material, because if you kind of look at the fork from the side, you can see how the tire would be higher here and it's lower there. So in the front, you have to use more material to clear the tire. So we can use less material. That's one of the main reasons. Ultimately, it's a weight savings thing. Allows us to get the stiffness we need with less material. And kind of like, speaking of stiffness, which you can see from this kind of, not just the reverse arch, but the radical shaping of it, this arch is a big reason why this fork is 40% stiffer than our previous 32 SC.
Wow.
Torsionally.
Wow.
So this fork is nearly as stiff as a 34 SC. So one of the complaints that some riders would have on the previous 32 SC was that it was a little not torsionally stiff, right? You could feel some flex out of it. Being a 150-pound rider myself, I never really felt that too much. But like our bigger riders and our stronger riders who really push hard in the corners would often say that. So between the crown shape, where we did a lot of 3D shaping here and here, we were able to increase stiffness 40%, while also dropping, here for all you weight weenies, 100 plus grams out of the entire fork versus the previous model.
So that's the total weight savings,
Yes.
damper and chassis?
Correct.
There's
correct.
100 grams.
Yes, correct.
Okay, got it.
So, and I can break that down. Like I said, 50 comes out of the damper.
Yeah.
We dropped another 12 out of the new axle. The new crown is way stiffer, but also 9 grams lighter. We developed a new steer tube. It's actually shared with the 34 step cast. That's 11 grams lighter than the one that was in the previous 32 step cast. On the upper tubes here, typically we use the same upper tube on both sides, and it's single butted. The reason it's single butted is because the air spring, the plunger rides on it. So you can't double butt it or anything like that. But on the damper side, you don't have that problem because the damper is effectively a cartridge, right? So we went ahead and produced a whole new damper side upper tube that's double butted, and that's like another 9 grams. We went with the 32 taper cast cable guide. So we borrowed the steer tube from 34 step cast. We borrowed the cable guide from 32 taper cast, and it's this teeny little minimal cable guide that saves like literally a less than a gram. But it's like, when you take that mentality of like, as us weight weenie guys know, like, shave every possible gram you can where you can, right? But then again, we told the engineering team, in this case it was Brian Anderson who designed the fork, we're like, hey Brian, just like Brian Lampman on the damper, we're like, make it lighter and make it stiffer. So he shaved out 100 grams plus, like 103, 105, depending on manufacturing variances and stuff like that, while also increasing stiffness by 40%, which is just unheard of. And again, with the damper, the ride quality went up as well. So this is a huge step forward compared to the previous model that it replaces.
I can get a remote lockout?
Absolutely,
Yep, yep.
Remote or just the standard on top of the fork dial.
grab
Yeah, either way.
Setup is the same?
Totally the same.
Yeah.
We're finding with the damper, you'll probably adjust your air pressures a little bit because the damper and the air spring work together, sort of, and you might find like since you're getting more support, you might need like less or more air depending on your riding preferences. But yeah, more or less, you set sag, and then you've got your 3 positions on the damper side to kind of get yourself happy with how much pedaling platform you've got.
John, you found us some grams. We thank you for that. You found us a lot of grams.
100 grams. That's like almost a quarter pound. We'll take it.
We'll take it
in
every
freedom
time.
units. Yeah.
Thanks
right
again,
on.
Sean. Congrats on the fork.
Thank you. It's always nice catching up.
The Fox SC32 with SL damper and remote is $1,049. It is an expensive way to cut weight, but Fox says you will be on the lightest cross-country fork on the market.
I've never figured the feed would have a way for us to lighten the load, but they do. It's not a big thing, but they are something you will likely need, and they can save you about 80 grams.
Hey, we are about marginal gains, at least on a different show, and kind of on this one as well. You can find these weight savings by having the feed's race day bottles in your cages. They come in 2 sizes, 750 milliliters or 950 milliliters. In ounces, that's 23 and 32 ounces. That is a good amount of fluid, but surprisingly, the bottles aren't all that tall. The secret to high volume and low weight savings is the thinner plastic on the sides of the bottles.
The other great thing about the Race Day bottle and its softer, thinner plastic is it's easy to squeeze and get that fluid out. When you're riding hard, you want everything else to be easy, even little things like forcing fluid out of a water bottle. One other thing we love are the standout colors of these bottles. They come in the feeds blue or yellow. The yellow one in particular will really stand out for the racer wanting a hand up.
Cutting weight from your setup is an endless chase, but hey, you got to hydrate, so why not shave a few grams in the process? You can find the Feed Race Day bottle on the Feed's website, and you can claim an $80 annual credit for this or any other product at thefeed.com/Leadville. You just register your email, you verify your phone number, and then you spend your first feed credit of $20 right away.
Okay, back to our weight-winning shopping spree at Sea Otter. We stopped in the Maxxis booth to talk to Cy Fape about 2 favorite topics when it comes to Leadville bikes. That would be weight and tires.
So we're here looking for weight savings at Sea Otter for our Leadville racers, and Maxxis has maybe found us more than a few dozen grams. What's going on with Maxxis and its Premier XC tire?
Correct. Today we just launched our Team Spec tires, which are 170 TPI versions of our Aspen and newly launched Aspen ST. So those additions are going to save you about 50 to 60 grams versus 120 tires. The downside of that is that you're going to have less puncture protection. Okay, so when you go higher in TPI, the less durable it's going to be, but more supple. So you're going to get better traction out of the 170. It's going to be lighter weight. It's going to be faster. That's why our top pro athletes use it.
When you say, I'm going to say 50 to 60, is that per tire, 50 to 60 grams?
Per tire, 50 to 60 grams.
So I can save 100 to 120 grams in my setup if I go with a 170 TPI tire over a 120, correct?
Correct. So the Aspen ST 120 TPI version is 750 grams versus the 170, which is 685. So that's pretty substantial per tire, and I think a lot of people are going to be stoked about that.
Right. And if I'm on a 60 TPI tire, then
It's huge.
And it's huge at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Aspen ST, we've seen this on Nino Schurter's bike a lot. I think Kate Courtney runs it once in a while. And we know that Keegan Swinson runs it too at Leadville. He's been very fast on it.
Yep.
Those are very good riders.
Yep.
Who else do you think can handle the ST tread, which is quite shallow down the center line? What kind of rider can handle that kind of tread?
So honestly, I wanted to find that out myself, so I took it with me to Sedona, Arizona for the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival, and I rode my cross-country bike around there. I wanted to see if it could the 170 TPI version could hold up to the sharp rocks and how that tire would feel. Is that something that an amateur XC rider like myself could ride? And I found it super predictable, very easy to ride, and insanely fast, like much quicker than an Aspen even. Wow. So that's why our athletes are so keen to use that. That's why the rest of the riding community, I think, is keen to use it, because the tread pattern is just so advantageous to that quick style of riding.
Yeah. And who would you say it's not for? Like, who would you steer towards more towards just the regular Aspen?
You don't want to ride that tire in mixed conditions, really. You want this tire for dry, grassy, gravelly type of conditions. It could do decent on rocks, but anything that where it starts to go soft and wet, you do not want that tire.
And loose over hard, that's a lot of what we see in California. Certainly at Leadville, you kind of get that false confidence because it looks maybe like dirt on the top, but it's really firm underneath.
Yep. Yeah. So that just is kind of going to be rider preference, honestly, at that point. If you have a pair of both, try both out, see what you like better. You can get more speed with the Aspen ST. So it's just what you're willing to put on the line, really.
Maxxis has a huge line of XC, a huge line of tires, period. But I think I can't even count how many. You have the Icon, the Ardent, the Aspen. Am I missing anything else?
Tons of
the Recon.
Tire. Yeah, we got the Recon Race. We got the Severe for the mud conditions. So we kind of got a little bit for everybody. So
okay, so tell me where your XC riders are leaning these days as far as your lineup.
So the Aspen is our premier race tire. The ST is going to be an even faster version of that for the short track, for the people that want to push the limits. Icon is a general use XC tire. Recon Race is something in between an Aspen and an Icon. You need a little bit more grip than an Aspen, but not as much as an Icon. And then the Severe is on for the mud conditions, just fast rolling mud tires. So.
Is the Ardent still in your lineup?
The Ardent is not in our lineup anymore, so that is being discontinued finally. It's the Recon was designed to be a better version of the Ardent, so that's what we're finally establishing. So.
But the Aspen and the Aspen ST, these are going to be the go-to. I don't know if you know Leadville, if you know much about it. Do you think that's a tire you'd line up with?
I think that's the best tire for Leadville. If you're going for speed, you're going for winning, I think that's the exact tire that I would choose for that type of terrain.
And again, in those two tires, if I wanted some extra puncture protection, do you guys offer it at all? Say maybe on the rear, I wanted a little puncture protection in either of those two tires. Do you offer it?
So for the Aspen and the Aspen ST, you're only going to be able to get it in 170 or 120 TPI. So no 60 TPI in those versions. But Keegan has raced, I believe, both versions. So it just depends on which puncture protection you want. The 170s being available now for a limited time to everybody.
Well, Cy, thanks for finding me a few grams here today, and maybe a little speed. We'll have to check out
on the course. Yeah, excited for everybody.
Oh, Hottie, it hurts. I am heartbroken to hear my favorite Ardent race is being phased out, but there are so many great tires out there. The Conti Race King has become another great choice for Leadville racers. If you dare ride the Aspen ST, its weight savings will cost you $101 for the Pro Spec tire and $88 for the somewhat sturdier 120 TPI tire.
Finally here, Fatty, something I know you already carry in your seat bag and probably one of the cheapest ways to cut weight, and that is a TPU tube. Wilderness Trail Bikes recently launched one of those lightweight tubes. We spoke with WTB's James Heaton about them and another little gram saver they've introduced.
We've heard of TPU tubes before, but WTB has a new entry to this. Tell us about the tube you guys launched earlier this spring, I think it was.
Yes, it was, yeah. So back at the Taipei show, we launched 3 sizes of TPU tube. Basically, they're a third lighter and a third smaller than like your traditional tube that people are going to carry around. So if you're strapping a tube to your bike, you're definitely going to be saving a lot of weight there in your pack. But additionally, I mean, if you're going to run them, like we love tubeless, but if people want to run these in their bikes anyway, it's going to lighten up their wheel system. And the TPU tube, the way it works, actually you get better rolling resistance as well. 3 sizes.
And you have a 29er size, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're actually more puncture resistant as well than a traditional butyl tube. And I'm not sure if anyone else does this, but they come with alcohol pads and self-adhesive patches to keep them going. So, yeah, I mean, you're pretty set. You've got that in your pack, you carry it around, and if you need to, you can repair it with everything that comes with the tube. So,
what makes TPU special? What's this material about?
It's basically called thermoplastic polyurethane. It's basically you can get more strength to weight than you can from traditional butyl rubber. So it's a more expensive production, it's a more expensive tube, but it's a good upgrade, especially if you're going to be carrying it around. You're saving all that space and weight.
So more strength to weight means you can make a thinner material, and that's how it gets lighter?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you get them in your hand, you can really pull on them and you can feel like how pliable and how stretchy they are, considering how thin they are. So yeah, it's pretty impressive material.
So for the 29er tube, do you know what the overall weight is?
80 grams for the 29er, and that's up to a 2.5. So yeah, full size tube.
Okay, that's cool. That'll save us a little weight, and especially if you want to carry. Now you can carry. It's a good excuse to carry two then.
Absolutely, yeah. Help your friends out if you need to. Yeah, you're all set.
Okay, so we've cut some weight in our seat pack, hopefully, and then you folks have as well, you also launched a repair tool, a tubeless repair tool, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct, yes. So we launched the Rocket tool. The Rocket tool itself, it's a pretty cool thing. It's CNC'd aluminium, and it holds inside, enough equipment to fix multiple punches. But the pretty cool thing, if we're talking about weight saving, is the refill packs that you can buy to kind of top up the tool as you keep going. The refill packs can be used as a standalone tubeless repair kit on their own if you're carrying a multi-tool, which everybody is anyway. If it's in your frame, your stem, whatever. The anchors, so basically our kit, you feed like a standard tubeless plug through an aluminium anchor, and the anchor can fit on the top of a 2mm or a 3mm Allen key and be pushed into the tire there. So, you can like either carry them in the packaging they come with or put those in like a little Ziploc bag, and it's probably the smallest and lightest way to really securely fix a tubeless repair.
Because the full kit is like in a small cylinder, but you're saying that tool, the tool that pushes the bacon strip in, can come off and you can just put it on your multi-tool.
Yeah.
Quite convenient. Okay, so that'll save me some weight too. So I think here at the WTB booth, I've saved at least 60, 70 grams, I think, just by coming here.
Yeah, for sure. If you're going to go minimalistic on the plug kit, absolutely.
All right, well, thanks so much. And we got to carry a tube, right? I mean, as much as we love tubeless, you got to still carry a tube.
Yeah, you want to get home.
TPU tubes have been in my saddlebags for at least a couple of years now. They are a great way to lighten the load. WTB's Nano Air TPU tube is $32.
Okay, let's round out our gram counting with our first guest in this episode, Kristen Ligon, back with us to put a bow on the topic of weight and your Leadville bike setup. I'm going to ask you, like I asked you about weight, do you weigh your bikes?
Yeah, I do. Just, again, kind of out of that curiosity factor of just seeing, like, where are we at? It's something that it's fun to do. It's fun to see changes if you make little, if you put on some lighter wheels, that kind of thing. It's nice to see that change happening. But yeah, I think it's more just curiosity rather than being obsessed with, bike weight.
You won the 350 XL on a titanium bike, a pretty, workman-like bike. On that type of event, did you feel like weight was a factor? Were you even worried about it?
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, yeah, of course you want to have a light setup. It's going to make you get up the hills a little bit faster here and there. But on a flatter course like Unbound, especially over 350 miles of kind of rolling terrain, it wasn't the biggest factor. I mean, for that race particularly, it was about durability and just making sure you can get through 350 miles with what turned out to be about 15 miles of mud. So durability was much bigger priority at that race.
Right. And now that you're back in the Grand Prix and you're, again, working with bike setup, you're going to do some mountain bike stuff, including the Leadville 100. How does bike weight factor into what your equipment choices?
Well, yeah, so I'm riding Mosaic titanium bikes again this season. So I'll be on their new gravel GT1 I45. So they're integrated gravel bike. And then I'm on a Thai hardtail for Leadville and for Sea Otter here. So, it's a beautiful bike. I love riding Thai. It's a great material. It just feels great as a rider. And I've gotten my hardtail down to close to sub 22 pounds at this point. Okay. So it's not a heavy bike by any means.
Right.
But I also again just think like the ride quality of the bike is going to be far more important than some crazy light bike that feels like trash going downhill.
So to get that bike down to 22, you must have focused in on some components. What are the components you look to try and say, I could probably find
10, 50, 100
Yeah.
grams here or there.
Yeah, I think, wheels are a big one. I think it's a great opportunity. It's rolling weight, that kind of thing. So wheels are a big one. And then I'm running a full XTR setup, so super lightweight. But again, it has that like durability aspect to it all. So I'm not sacrificing any kind of performance just to get it lighter. Because again, if you can't finish the race, it doesn't matter how light you are.
Mm-hmm. And so what would be a no-go for you as far as exchanging something out for weight reasons?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that's going to be dangerous, that's not going to stand up to the terrain, the trail. I think hopefully that's a no-brainer for folks. But also I think just like you have to balance that weight savings, that climbing ability versus everything else. Like Leadville has a lot of straight, flat, flattish type of riding. It has some good descents, that kind of thing. And so if your bike's only set up to go uphill and you have to creep down the downhills, you're losing all of that work that you just did. So it's a good balance. And so I think, again, just making sure everything's super functional and reliable.
Yeah. We can get awfully light with mountain bike tires, surprisingly light with mountain bike
Right.
tires now, and with high TPI counts that are quite tempting. Mm-hmm. Are you tempted, and what are your choices when you look at a race like Leadville and tires and weight?
Yeah, I think I personally am more interested in rolling resistance and that kind of speed versus the climbing. Obviously I don't want a super heavy tire, but something that's going to roll faster. Because again, like there's plenty of climbing at Leadville and it's at super high altitude, so weight makes a big difference. But there's also a ton of flat, and having a faster rolling tire on that is going to make up for any, a few grams here or there with a little bit heavier tire. And again, if you're getting flats because you're running a super light tire, it's not very fast.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to circle back to the scale. I think one of the reasons we love to weigh bikes is it's a mental marginal gain. Like we go, I have no excuse, right? You put that thing on, it says 22 pounds, 20, and you go, well, maybe I get to 21.9. That feels a lot better than 22.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there something to that, do you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, anything we can do to get our brains to like think we're fast, think we're light is going to be a way, like honestly, that's a way bigger advantage than actually having a lighter bike. So tell your friends, tell your partners to go weigh your bike and, take off a few pounds and tell you what the weight is, because you're going to be like, oh man, this 19-pound bike feels amazing, even if it is 22, 23 pounds.
Hey, over your years of covering the bike industry, is there any crazy weight-saving things that you've seen? You've gone, wow, that's incredible.
Thankfully, I haven't seen too many crazy things out there. I mean, there used to be things of like drilling parts and pieces to cut some weight, which is like, oh my gosh, like not a good idea at all. But lately, no, I think, we're seeing products being developed with all the aspects in mind. So weight, rolling resistance, aerodynamics, all of that kind of pieced together. So thankfully, we have a lot of options to choose from.
Mm-hmm. All right, give us another perspective on this topic. Bike weight. What would you like people to keep in mind as they start looking to cut grams off their bike?
I think I'm going to circle back. Just keep saying the same thing. Just thinking about that durability and just what you can do to keep things moving and keep things really consistent out there.
Mm-hmm. Kristen Ligon, thanks so much for your help on the topic of bike weight and personal weight.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks again to Kristen Ligon, Dr. Alan Lim, and Scratch, Fox Factory, WTB, and Maxxis Tires. We hope we found you a few grams in this episode.
Yeah, without fail, I think about weight every year leading to this race. We can make more out of it than we need to until we start climbing Columbine, when suddenly every gram matters.
You can, and we do, talk about every gram, ounce, pound, and kilo surrounding the Leadville 100 on our Slack channel, which is leadville.fm/Slack. If you like the show, go to wherever you listen, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. To see all the ways you can find this independent show, it is leadville.fm.
Good luck in your training, your weight losing or not. Thanks for listening, and we're going to see you real soon at the starting line.